Why would anyone spend an outrageous amount of money to buy what you have built with a budget of nothing but sweat, hustle, and a lot of grit? Well, in this video, I am going to lay it out for you why exactly buyers are willing to pay you a huge premium to buy what you have built. And it's not just a few of them. There's literally hundreds of them. Let's get into it. All right, so buyers are actually quite diverse. There is a lot of different types of buyers, from a newbie buyer to all the way up to private equity and family offices. All buyers we will cover in this video and some more to boot. But in general, buyers share some common traits. For one, no buyer wants to buy a job. They all want to buy an investment vehicle. Your business represents that investment vehicle for them. It is a riskier investment vehicle than, say, your traditional stocks and real estate, but the rewards can also be far, far more fantastic. So that's the first thing. All buyers are looking to buy an investment, not a job. Now, almost every single buyer under the sun is willing to give you more money for a less risky businesses. Business with less risk, it represents a more premium valuation because a valuation is often based on risk. The riskier the business it is, the lower valuation is going to get, the lower sales price is going to get. So in terms of what buyers are looking for, they're looking to buy growth that has as little amount of risk as possible. Sounds great in an ideal world, right? Next, they're looking for a defensible moat. Now, I've talked about this in the past, but a moat is basically just a fancy way of saying how hard is it for someone else to copy what you have built. If you're a dropshipping store, it's pretty easy. If you are a big 8-figure SaaS, it might be hard. If you are a big DTC e-commerce store, again, might be hard. You've built some real good assets, some real good brand, and you have a deeper moat. The deeper your moat is, the more valuable your business will become because it is harder for other people to compete with you. Therefore, buyers are more intrigued to give you that outrageous amount of money. But most of all, if you boil down all the buyers underneath the sun of every single type, the one thing that they are looking for the most is to buy growth. This is where you, as the seller, as the entrepreneur, often make the mistake, in my view. And that is because you are wanting to grow the business and then sell. Really, you should be wanting to sell the business as you are growing. That is the best place to sell your business. You'll have the easiest transaction, it'll be the smoothest, and overall, it works out great. You'll get a better multiple because buyers are willing to pay a premium, not just for less risky businesses, they're willing to pay a premium for businesses that are also growing. If your business is going like this and then it's starting to do the stagnation right here, that is not going to be as good of a sell versus if you sold right here on the way up. Now, a very important thing to consider here when it comes to buyers is another mistake that you might make is you think the buyer is buying based on potential. I mean, I just said they're buying for growth, right? You might think they would value you based on potential. Now, there is some truth to that, but in general, buyers are not going to value based on what might happen. If you say like, hey, look, I have this big Facebook group, it could become the next 7-figure business from this audience. Hey, that's great, but that's not what it is right now. Buyers want to buy based on what you have already done, what is already working, because all that potential value, that's their value, right? That's the whole reason they're buying you, is to be able to mine that potential. So you as the seller are probably not going to receive like a huge increased multiple based on potential. In fact, I almost always recommend sellers not to sell based on potential, because if you tell a buyer, hey, look, this is the next $1 billion thing, the buyer will be like, fantastic, Mr. Seller. I will happily give you $1 billion. Let's do an earnout since you're so confident. Here's $1. And when we hit that $1 billion, you're going to make it big. Like, no one wants that, right? You don't want that. And the buyer knows that you were just trying to hype them up on your business. So this is a losing strategy when it comes to appeasing and appealing to the different buyers. Now, when it comes to actual buyer types, if you took all the buyers and you put them into just a few buckets, what would they look like? And there are categories we can look at here despite the diversity I mentioned earlier. So buyers in general can be divided into roughly 4 buckets. Now, the first 3 are the most common, and I'm going to get into the fourth one later on in the video, so stay tuned. And the fourth one is probably the most powerful one, so you definitely want to hear about that one. So the first type of buyer is the newbie buyer. The second type of buyer is the entrepreneur, your fellow entrepreneur. The third type of buyer is what I call the wizards. And then the fourth type of buyer, as I said, we'll get into it. Gotta keep you in for my retention, right? Please keep watching the video. All right, let's describe the newbie. So the newbie is a buyer just getting started. They typically don't have a lot of experience. Maybe they have 0 experience. They might never even have ran a business. Typically, they're going to be people still in a 9-to-5 of some sort, maybe middle management. They have some money to spare, and they're really wanting to get into the game of entrepreneurship. And they think buying is just the safer and better path. And honestly, like, this is going to sound really biased, but I agree with them. I think buying a business is a far safer path to get to where you want to go with entrepreneurship than building one from scratch, but that's a video for another time. So because of this lack of experience, a newbie buyer is going to need more hand-holding from you. You're going to have to be a little bit more nurturing, should we say, because this is their first time doing it, right? So they're more timid, they have a lot more anxiety, and they have a lot less skill. They don't know how to make good offers typically. They don't know how to run the business yet. So they're going to need some consolation from you. You're going to have to probably give them more support than you'd give to other buyers, and you'd have to kind of coach them through on how to give you an actual good offer. Now, what do I mean by that? Why can't newbie buyers make good offers? They absolutely can, and we help coach them to do that. But the problem is their lack of experience, like I already mentioned, right? So when a newbie buyer gets into the M&A world, often how they come in is through some business buying guru talking about $0 down strategies or $1 down or deferred down payments, all this crazy stuff that is super, super sexy and really, really appealing to a newbie buyer who might not have that much capital. But the problem that these buyers or these gurus talking about this type of stuff, they're not wrong. You can do all that stuff. I've seen it happen many, many times. It's definitely a good strategy. The problem and the thing that newbies don't recognize that these are very advanced strategies. They're used in much more different scenarios than your run-of-the-mill business acquisition. So yeah, you absolutely can do $0 down kind of deals. But if you're a newbie buyer, probably a really bad deal for you because there's a reason why a seller is going to take a $0 down payment, right? And you as a seller, you're probably thinking, I would never do that. And yeah, I don't blame you. Some sellers, they are in a position where that is one of the only ways that makes sense to get their business acquired. And they don't usually sell for very much. So if you're a newbie buyer, I want to use this strategy. And if you're a seller talking to a newbie buyer, it is very likely that you will run across these type of newbie buyers doing these extremely advanced M&A strategies that they don't know really much anything about. They just watched a YouTube video. Apparently not my YouTube video though. The last bit of the newbie buyer is they're typically going to be self-funded. Maybe they have some friends and family come in, but that's super rare. And typically they are going to be looking at businesses in the price range. Once they come down to reality with their $0 down offers and stuff like that, once they hit reality, that is when they will start budgeting properly of the type of businesses that they're looking for. So if you're trying to sell a business, say it is a $200,000 business, there's going to be a lot of newbie buyers looking at buying what you have built. They typically range from $500,000 and under in terms of their market range that they're looking for. Now, you might be really annoyed by newbie buyers from everything I just said, but there is actually a pretty cool thing that happens here if you sell to a newbie buyer. So newbie buyers, when they buy your business, you can change their life like pretty dramatically. Like I've sold a lot of these type of businesses, and a lot of these new buyers are able to grow the business, change their entire life, like leave their job, go move to where they want. They can spend more time with their family. So when it comes to the emotional reward of what you can do to this buyer, it's very, very high. You can dramatically change these people's lives. And in a sense, like, yeah, you're going to get the money too, but like the emotional reward is almost greater of what you were able to do for this person by them like giving you $500,000, right? All right, next type of buyer, my fellow entrepreneur. These ones are fun because unlike the newbie buyer, these people know you. They basically are you, right? They know the peaks and the valleys, the triumphs and the defeats, the up and down hamster wheel that is the fun game of entrepreneurship that we're all playing, right? They understand what you're going through, and they're very similar to you at the end of the day. And this gives you a bunch of advantages. For one, they're probably going to respect your legacy because, hey, that's what they would want too. They don't want someone just buying their business and throwing it in the garbage can, even if they have a bunch of money, right? So these guys are actively looking to grow your business in a big, big way, and they're very similar to you, which often means the deal structure itself is going to be pretty straightforward. Now, they will almost always, like if you're above $500,000 in your sales price, they almost always will have some kind of earnout, some kind of stabilization payment, and it's going to be pretty straightforward on how you get the rest of that money. Sometimes it's over a year, sometimes it's going to be over 2 years, but it's usually pretty straightforward. Nothing really crazy in terms of how they're structuring the deal. Similar to newbie buyers, often entrepreneurs will be self-funded as well. But because they own a business that allows their earnings to way outsize, their own skill in some aspects, they are typically able to buy bigger businesses. So a entrepreneur is usually going to be looking at businesses that are in the price range of $3 million and under. Now they can go higher. They absolutely can go higher, but that is going to be the typical range for your typical entrepreneur buyer. Now, when it comes to funding, as I mentioned, most of them are going to be self-funded, just like the newbie buyer, but there will be some of them that will JV with other entrepreneurs. Maybe they do a small friends and family capital raise, but typically the bulk of the money is coming from them. Now, this is important to know because when you go sell your business as an entrepreneur, that business probably represents 90% to 100% of your net worth. So when an entrepreneur comes and buys your $3 million e-commerce store or whatever it is, it's very important for you to relate to that entrepreneur that they are spending a large chunk of their net worth. We're talking 20, 30, 40, 50%, or more of their entire net worth on taking the risk of acquiring you. So you should respect that when you are dealing with these entrepreneurs. And the nice thing is you should know that they are good for it on the earnout and on the stabilization payment because of their track record, right? They have a track record of running successful businesses already, probably in a very similar space as you, like a similar business model, all that kind of stuff. So you know that they can actually walk the walk, right? They're not just talking the talk, like they're living, breathing versions that are very similar to you. So that makes this all very nice. Dealing with entrepreneurs is often great. When you sell to an entrepreneur buyer, it's not uncommon for you two to stay in contact and do other deals together down the road, either through partnership, acquisitions with them. Maybe they have a big pool of money from a few exits. Now you just got a big pool of money from them buying your business and you guys JV and buy more businesses. That is not an uncommon path when you sell to an entrepreneur. All right, type number 3, the wizards. The wizards are very fascinating people. So the financial wizards are types of buyers that are usually going to be in a category of private equity, family offices, people who have raised capital from those two in a search fund kind of manner. So if anyone remembers the Amazon FBA aggregators circa 2020 and 2021, RIP aggregators, if anyone remembers them, they were essentially in a lot of ways like a massive search fund. They had raised all this capital from different private equity firms, family offices, and debt services from a multitude of sources, right? To go and buy businesses. So these are the financial wizards. Usually the financial wizard, they are really good at spreadsheets, really good at financial forecasting, and they're very, very good at M&A. Like they know how to make acquisitions, they know how to do good offers, but they often are not so good operationally, which often means that they need to hire an operator to run the business that you are selling them. So your business needs to have enough cash flow to be able to support that operator while also supporting their investment thesis because they have investors to appease, right? So they often don't run the business. They will hire an operator to run the business once they acquire you. And oftentimes they'll be hiring the operator kind of in tandem while they're doing due diligence on your business. So they'll be putting out the feelers for someone to fill that role. So the moment that the acquisition is done, that person comes in and is now the effective CEO or whatever chief of staff that they want to name that person. Now, a wizard can pay you a lot more than the newbie and the entrepreneur. They have way more funding than any of those combined. And even a $3 million business often represents a very tiny point of their overall fund that they have raised. So they can pay you much more than all the other guys that I've mentioned so far, which is fantastic because you want to get that money up front. If anyone's not going to pay you the earnout or the stabilization payment, it's usually these guys. It's usually because they will have like these incredibly complex deal structures that, you need like an accountant and legal lawyer or a broker like us, some kind of intermediary to decipher what are they talking about. And sometimes they will hide ways to save money in the actual deal structure itself. So an example of this, we sold a business, it was around, forgetting the exact number, I think it was $2.5 million. But the buyer came in who was a wizard and gave them this great deal structure to where if the seller accepted it, then they were going to get paid way more than that $2.5 million. And we had to tell that seller, do not take this deal. And they were like, why? It's so good. Why would I not take it? Like the reason why it was a bad deal is because to get the earnout, to get the rest of your money that the buyer was offering, the business had to grow to this unrealistic level to hit that milestone for a payout. And the buyer knew this. The buyer definitely knew that the business was not going to grow that fast. So they also knew, hey, I get the business and I don't have to pay all this other capital and the seller is still happy. Well, we didn't hit the milestone, right? So this is a strategy that the wizards will use. The wizards are very good at deal structures, and most sellers, you watching this video, probably are not good at deal structures, right? You don't exactly know what is good, what is bad. You likely have never sold a business, or at most, maybe you sold one. Versus these guys, they're buying businesses all the time. I knew one of the wizards who they bought, I think it was like 6 businesses in 30 days. So yeah, they're doing a lot of deal flow. They know this thing inside and out. The only person that handles more M&A transactions than a wizard is people like us, a broker or intermediary. Like, we do a lot more, so we understand the games that they try to play, and we can help you to make sure you play it well as well, so you don't end up with one of these capital mitigation tactics where you get screwed, right? But that's the wizard. One thing to note, when a wizard is doing due diligence on you, it can feel pretty vulnerable because the wizards are very good at M&A, they're very good at due diligence, and they're very good at negotiation. So they will often hire third-party financial firms, third-party marketing firms, all sorts of different auditors to go deep in your business. And that can feel, honestly, really uncomfortable. It could feel like, oh my God, I am being judged so hard right now. I don't even want to do this process anymore. I don't care, all this stuff. Like, these are real things that you will feel when a wizard comes knocking on your door. And they do all this stuff to whittle down your sales price more and more, but also because they do have actual investment mandates that they must meet in order to acquire your business. So they need to make sure everything is compliant as much as possible. Compliance is a huge thing, but it is very stressful when you sell to a wizard. Now, the reward for all the stress is you will get paid a significant amount of money. And unlike the entrepreneur and the newbie, you should be asking for as much money upfront as possible. You're never going to get 100%, but you want as much money upfront as possible, and you want to minimize the deal structure complexity as much as possible, because that is usually where these wizards excel, and that's usually where sellers lose, is in that complex, nuanced deal structure. Try to bring it as simple as possible. And at the end of the day, you should only sell your business to a wizard if the upfront amount of money that you're getting is enough. As in, like, does that make you happy? If you never got another cent, would you be happy? Obviously, you want more money, but being realistic, like, was this worth it to sell it, right? And if the answer is no, then I wouldn't recommend selling to a wizard, even though they do tend to pay all their earnouts. Like, the vast majority of all buyers tend to pay their earnouts. I know this because, like I mentioned, we sold over 2,000 businesses and we manage the actual earnouts for our sellers in most of the cases. So most earnouts do get paid, but the ones that I've seen that has really screwed sellers tends to be from the wizards. So just, seller beware here, right? The last thing I'll say on the wizards is, unlike the newbie where you can change their life dramatically, and unlike the entrepreneur who's probably going to carry on your legacy, the wizard cares much less about all of that. They really could care less about your legacy usually. They might tell you they care, like, we really partner with our entrepreneurs, all this stuff. Most of the time, that's just lip service though. I'm sorry if you're a wizard watching this, but it's true. Like, most wizards, they have a mandate of a fund that's between 2 to 10 years where they need to make aggressive returns for their investors, right? So when they acquire your business, they're willing to do anything to get that going, as long as it's compliant, of course. So they will lay off your staff, they will restructure, they will change and pivot like crazy. They will do 1,000 things as fast as possible to spend all that money to grow the business really quickly. And in a short amount of time, the business you sold might not look like anything that you built anymore. It could be completely different. It might not even be alive anymore. Because a lot of times wizards will buy bigger businesses and they will go out of business. Because remember what I said, they don't usually operate the business. They need good operators typically to make these kind of investments work. But if they're fast enough, they can sometimes make it happen where they don't need that operator. And the goal of these wizards, what they're trying to do ultimately is to sell to a bigger wizard. So that's their strategy. They want to buy a business like yours, so they do crazy stuff to it to make it grow really fast, and then exit that business to another wizard. That's their goal. Wizards selling to wizards. All right, now it's time for the fourth buyer on this list, the secret buyer. And this is the only buyer that can actually beat the wizard at their own game, because this buyer, unlike all the other buyers, spend the most amount of money to acquire you. They can give you the most amount of money upfront for your business, and that is the strategic. The strategic is kind of a hybrid between the entrepreneur and the wizard. So a strategic is an entrepreneur just like you, probably in a very similar industry or tangentially related industry. The only difference between you and them is typically that strategic is much bigger. They are a vastly bigger business, vastly bigger entrepreneur than you are. And that's what makes them the strategic. So a metaphor here, and this is not the way it always plays out. This is just to like give you a demonstration of like size, basically. Let's say you have a skincare e-commerce store selling lotions. A strategic comes, they're the people that run the factory. Like they own the manufacturing rights, they own the land that the factory is on. They manufacture beauty and cosmetic products for 100 different stores. Like this is the type of strategic that comes along to buy your e-commerce store, because now 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 like it does for a wizard or an entrepreneur. For a strategic, 1 + 1 can equal 10, 16, 20, right? Depending on how related those businesses can be. So a strategic, that's the reason why a strategic can beat out the wizard by paying you even more money than the wizard can. Because ultimately the growth that they can get from your business when it's combined with the rest of their portfolio is far greater than what the wizard can do. Now, one of the other reasons that makes the strategic the best buyer, like hands down on this list, is because while they can pay you more than the wizard, they're probably going to respect your legacy as much as the entrepreneur. Because at the end of the day, the strategic is not buying to get a massive ROI for their shareholders, for their investors. Like they're not looking to flip what they're buying from you in 2 to 5 years to another wizard or another strategic. They have a much more long-term vision of why they are acquiring you, which means your legacy and what you're doing will probably not only be respected, but will actually grow pretty big. Now, does that happen all the time? No. Strategics can be just as cutthroat as the wizard, but in the grand scheme of things, typically they will have a much longer view picture of what they're trying to do with your business. So a couple last things on the strategic. When I talk about that stress that you're going to feel when a wizard comes knocking on your door, you will most likely feel that with a strategic too, because they are probably going to do deep financial analysis on what you have as well, from your marketing, from your P&L, all that kind of stuff. They have the resources to do that, and they're doing that to cover themselves to make sure what you're selling is legit. So you will probably feel a lot of that similar amount of stress as you would selling to a wizard. Obviously, the outcome is a little bit different. You're going to get paid more. And the other thing that differentiates the strategic versus the wizard is often the strategic wants to keep you on board. They want to keep all that founder knowledge with them, that legacy knowledge. Now, you might not be the CEO of the business anymore. They might put, a professional CEO on that business, but you're still there as kind of a brand advisor. Sometimes you will be the CEO. It just kind of depends on the deal. But a lot of times the strategic person will respect the knowledge of the founder more than the wizard. Like often the wizard's like, yeah, here's your money and I'll go away. Let me do all this black magic over here to grow the business. Versus the strategic actually like wants your input. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. So like, what do you know? All that kind of stuff, because often the strategic knows like what is super routine to you, where you didn't even think to tell the buyer, is not routine to the buyer because they've never ran your business, right? And the strategic typically knows that. So when it comes to the integration part, which is the most critical part of M&A from a buyer's perspective, when it comes to actually integrating your business into theirs, they want your help to do that. And often that will be tied to your earnout in the deal structure. Deal structures, by the way, with strategics can be just as complex as financial wizards, though there is typically going to be less of the joking around, the clowning that goes on with the wizard, because like the strategic's goal is not to get you for as cheap as possible. Their goal is more to get you to come over to them and become a true premium asset to their whole portfolio, right? So it's a little bit of a different thing. So while their deal structures might be complex, typically their deal structures have less hidden traps in them, I should say. So why am I telling you about all these buyer types? Well, if you want to sell your business, it is very important for you to understand where buyers are coming from. Because remember, no one buys anything, whether it's a business, it's a coffee, whatever, based on logic. They buy everything based on emotion. And now buyers will come at your business with a much more colder logic than what you have for your own business when it comes to value your business, of course. But at the same time, they are purchasing the emotional purchase. So you want to frame your business when you go to sell your business to match that emotional response of that buyer. If they're a newbie, like, okay, I need to be more nurturing. I need to handhold them. I need to not be confrontational when they give me an aggressive offer because, oh, they're probably a newbie. They don't know what they're doing yet. Let me help them out, right? So you need to approach them in that manner. Versus an entrepreneur, you're going to be approaching them in a much different way. A wizard, you're going to be approaching it in a different way. And a strategic is a much different way. So by knowing the different types of buyers out there, you can frame your business, which is the product you're trying to sell, in such a way where it appeals to that certain buyer. And there's so much magic, there's so much power that happens when you really position your business in such a way. Now, that sounds like a lot of work for you, and I get it, because hey, it is a lot of work. Don't worry, we always got you covered here at Empire Flipper, so you can go click the link down below and sell your business with us today, and you let us handle the wizards for you.